Caucus.
Good morning, oh gosh. Woo! Good evening. Welcome to the City Council Caucus meeting for November 15th, 2022. We have a couple of items on the agenda for this evening. I'm going to rearrange the conversation just slightly because we have some individuals in the room. We have the Circle Port IRB, the Industrial Revenue Bond. Emmy, can we go ahead and get started with that first? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to provide an informational presentation for council tonight, but first I want to introduce some folks who are here on behalf of Corporex tonight. We have Tom Banta, who's here. He's the Chief Real Estate Officer with Corporex. We have Nicole Chimento there in the back. She's the Director of Development for Circle Port Business Park. And then we also have Daniel Blank with us. He's the Managing Director of Fixed Income Capital Markets for D.A. Davidson and Company. So these individuals, I'll take the liberty of calling on them if we get into questions, and they may have some additional things to add once I get finished with my presentation as well. Okay, just to orient you here, this is a map of the entirety of Circle Port Business Park. The area that we're looking at tonight for this industrial revenue bond project includes, let's see, do I have a pointer? No? Like a laser pointer? No? Okay, I'll just point. So the areas that we're talking about for this specific project are essentially the undeveloped parcels that remain within the city of Erlanger in the Circle Port Business Park. So we have one parcel that's down on Dolwick. That parcel is roughly 47 acres. If you're looking at the DAV development, that's the parcel that's just to the left of it, the undeveloped parcel that has kind of a knob or knoll to it. We also have two parcels on Olympic. Those are over by the Dynamic Catholic Institute and Sterling Cut Glass. Those are two roughly 10-acre each parcels that are undeveloped. And then we also have roughly 150 acres on Pacific Avenue that remain undeveloped. So in total, we've got roughly 217 acres. These sites have been sitting undeveloped for a couple of decades, really ever since the park has been developed. They've received a lot of interest over the years from companies for possible locations. However, the city and Corporex has just not been able to land the types of employers we would want to attract to these parcels, and it's really due to the conditions of the sites. The sites are not what's considered pad ready, so a company could not come in and start vertical construction immediately on these sites. A lot of them are heavily wooded, and that provides an issue with visibility onto the parcels when you're looking at them for potential development. And some of them also have pretty extreme topography, so they're steep, making it pretty difficult also to visualize the development. A lot of grading is necessary to get these really flat and pad ready for vertical construction. And what this does is not only does it add cost for a potential company to locate there, but it adds a lot of time. So lead time is really critical right now in the market for economic development sites. This is another map that shows more closely the parcels in question are the ones that are labeled here. And all of these are owned, although there are different names on the ownership, they're all affiliated with the Corporex companies. So what this project would accomplish is it would clear and grade these sites so that they would be flat and ready for development. This will reduce that time frame from an end user to purchasing and beginning construction, and will make them more visually appealing when we have companies that come and look at these sites for a potential site location for their company. It will ultimately reduce the project cost for that end user, and the project will also connect sidewalks throughout the development, which don't currently exist in all of these areas. In total, the construction costs and site prep work will cost about $8.5 million. And then the issuance of the bond will have legal costs and financing costs and interest associated with it. So in total, the bond issue request could be up to $14.125 million. The cost could be less depending on the timing of the bond market and how that proceeds. So this is how this project will work. Kentucky Revised Statutes allows cities and counties to issue industrial revenue bonds to finance industrial projects. So in this case, the city will serve as a conduit to allow this type of bond financing for the site preparation work. This will be mutually beneficial to both the developer and to the city. So the developer or the borrower of these funds will use the funds to cover the costs of this project. Throughout the life of this bond, the city will hold the title to this property, and that will make the property exempt from property taxes because we are a tax-exempt entity as the city. In lieu of paying those property taxes, we'll enter into what's called a pilot agreement, a payment in lieu of taxes. So the pilot agreement will establish some savings in what the tax obligation would be for the developer. The developer can then use that savings in the tax obligation to pay down the bond. So the other thing that this agreement does is it is an incentive to the developer to get the project accomplished and to get the buildings online and to pursue the development. So it's mutually beneficial. A couple of things to note about the bond, and we can get Mr. Blank up to answer additional questions if you have them, but the developer will be obligated to pay off this debt. It's not considered debt of the city, and the city is not obligated to pay it off. It will also not affect the city's credit rating. So Corporex has been working on providing some information about what could come of these parcels and what the project could look like at full build out if these parcels are pad ready and they've been graded and they can, companies can come in and pursue vertical development. What they're estimating here is over 1 million square feet of manufacturing space, approximately 110,000 square feet of distribution, and then about 530 square feet of office or flex office space. This is a rendering on this slide of what the potential building pads could look like on the Pacific area, Pacific Avenue sites. And the developer also provided a fiscal and economic impact study that was done by a third party to show what the build-out schedule could potentially look like, and also what the values would be long-term for those projects on each one of the parcels. So this essentially shows you what the build-out schedule would look like for that amount of square feet spread out over time, with a full build-out at approximately 2033. So right now, the city is not receiving any occupational license fees from any of these parcels. We have no jobs on these parcels. The fiscal impact study that was conducted by the third-party consultant provided some estimates for job numbers, and I think these are fairly consistent with what we're seeing in similar businesses in the city when you look at the square footages. So we're estimating over 3,000 jobs that could come to these parcels at full build-out, which could be up to $146 million in annual payroll. So the potential there for occupational license fees could be in excess of $2 million a year that the city could collect if this development comes to full fruition on that build-out schedule and on those square footage numbers. This slide shows you the current assessed value in total of all the parcels. Right now, all the parcels are valued at approximately $10.18 million. And this is a schedule of what each of the property tax collecting entities are getting for each one, all of the parcels combined each year. So this year, the city received $31,277 from all of the parcels combined in property taxes. The estimated property value at full build-out could be upwards of $426 million. This is a rendering showing, again, that Pacific Avenue area and what some of the potential building pads could look like built out in a manufacturing campus. Now, I mentioned before this idea of the payment in lieu of taxes. So again, with the issuance of the bond, the properties will go into the city's name and will be exempt from property taxes. The payment in lieu of taxes will establish what the developer will pay for each of the parcels into the city each year in lieu of taxes. So this does include a reduction in the amount of tax obligation that the developer would have to pay without this agreement, and that reduction is used to pay off the bond. So what's being proposed in this agreement is that the city would participate toward the project at a percent of 80% of participation and receive a 20% pilot payment from the initial inception of the bond. The schedule would be that the pilot payments to the city will increase at 5% every 5 years. So we get more every 5 years, and the participation goes down every 5 years. In addition, based on that build-out schedule, more buildings will come online, as the development is pursued. So that pilot payment will grow over time, both with the pilot schedule ratcheting up and with the development being pursued. So it's a little bit hard to read on here, but based on this schedule, we would exceed that $31,000 in property tax payments that we're getting now by year 3. And then as the schedule is pursued toward the end of the bond, we could potentially see payments of over $500,000 each year in the pilot payment schedule. Some other things to highlight about this agreement: there are no occupational license fees that are pledged as a part of this development agreement, so the city stands to retain all of those fees. The other thing to note is that we would still have the opportunity to offer, say, an EDGE incentive or a Kentucky Business Investment incentive based off of those occupational license fees that would be coming. In this development agreement, the size of the bond amount is pretty minimal compared to what's anticipated for the cash flow and the contributions in this pilot. And this has been done to show excess cash flow coverage to retain a good interest rate in today's bond market. So to make sure that the city and the other taxing entities are not giving up any more than is necessary, the developer has agreed to use this excess cash flow, so the excess participation and contribution from those taxing entities can only be used in one of 2 ways. It can be used to pay down the bond early, or it has to be redistributed back each year to those tax collecting entities. So if you think of this like if you got a 30-year mortgage on your house, but you wanted to make extra principal payments and pay it down early, That's essentially what this would be, an option for the developer to do, which would return the properties back to the property tax rolls sooner rather than later. If the bond is not exhausted early based on the excess cash flows, the excess cash flows each year will be redistributed back out to the taxing entities. And this is a possible model on what those excess cash flows could look like. So in addition to the pilot payment that was shown on the previous screen, the excess cash flows would come back to the city. And this schedule projects potential for excess cash flows of up to $700,000 each year toward the end of the bond schedule. And by year 3, the potential for over $300,000 a year. Again, this is based on the build-out schedule that's been projected and achieving those square footages and building values that are in that build-out schedule. So just a few summary points. The purpose of this project is to fund the work necessary to get these sites building pad ready. We are competing against other communities that have pad ready sites. We've lost some really good companies in the last couple of years that have chosen other sites just simply due to the timing of construction and the lead time necessary to get these sites ready. The county, the city, and the schools will be asked to give up some future property tax that may not have been achieved if we don't do this project. Without getting the sites ready, they could remain vacant for many more years and continue to contribute 0 jobs into the community and no additional tax revenue. The city does stand to gain in additional future occupational license fees and additional revenues from both the pilot agreement and the potential distribution of excess cash flow. And I also will note that CorporX has a demonstrated track record of bringing good companies to the city and doing really good projects. And I think Toyota and Wild Flavors are 2 that I would highlight in that. So the next steps in this is getting your all's feedback about this proposed development agreement and arrangement. I have also met with Kenton County Fiscal Court, Erlanger Ellesmere Schools, and the Kenton County School District in the last couple of weeks. And we are in conversations with them about their pilot agreement arrangements and how that will work for them, and want to make sure that they are satisfied with the agreement and that they're comfortable with it. So based on the feedback from this council as well as those other entities, we'll work to finalize an agreement and put forward legislation to move the project forward, possibly with an action at the December meeting if we're able to achieve that within that time frame. That concludes my remarks. I am sure you all probably have some questions, and I'm happy to bring up folks from the CorporX team if they want to add anything to the discussion as well.
Before we start with questions, I want to make a comment. Emmy, you've done a phenomenal job explaining this, first of all, tonight, but then also working diligently with CorporX, with Nicole, with Tom, and Dan, and understanding how we can positively impact these sites that have sat vacant. Like Emmy had said, this discussion started when we lost a really amazing potential business, and we don't want that type of company to slip through our fingers again. So making sure that we're taking steps to facilitate increased economic development is what brings us here tonight. So thank you for your diligence, and thank you all for your partnership in this process. Very well done. So we can open it up for questions. Ms. Kyle?
I hope I don't sound stupid, but where do the bonds come from? Do we pay them, or do we get them from the bank? No, I'm saying a no.
I'm going to let Dan come up and talk about the bond.
I'm sorry.
First answer is, we have no obligation on them.
Well, I know that.
Yeah.
I saw that.
All right.
I get that.
Great question. So basically what would happen is the city would be the issuer of the debt on a conduit basis, which means you don't have a legal obligation to make the payments. The payments will come from the property taxes that'll come back. And then our firm would sell those bonds to the general market and receive proceeds for the project fund.
Just want to remind council too, for those that were on council, this is virtually the same concept and agreement we had on the Showcase property. It's structured very similarly, so.
And we also did the same thing with Flagship Park. We did bonds on that, but I think we were responsible for those. That's why I was asking. Okay.
Tom?
So this length of time, is this usual and customary for this size of sites and things like that?
It is. Typically what we'll see, and I think Emmy mentioned it earlier, we'll actually see larger asks or larger project funds or need based on the build-out size. And I think the size of this build-out as projected, the ask proportionately is much less than I see, and I work on primarily just economic development transactions.
I was going to, excuse me, I was going to ask if we could bring the map back up. I just want to make sure I understand exactly where we're talking about. I have a hard time sometimes visualizing. I pulled it up on my phone, what you emailed to us, but the one before that. Sorry, yeah, that one. And of course, I can zoom in on my phone, but you can't zoom in on there. So I'm just trying to visualize. So it's all the spots where the stars are, correct? And basically 275 splits
Yes.
between it. Okay.
There's 2 parcels on Olympic that's off Turfway. And then there are parcels on Pacific Avenue, so if you come across Turfway and turn right on Pacific. And then the 1 parcel on Dulwick that is just to the left of DAV.
Remind me again what the zoning is for this area?
It's Business Park.
Business park, okay.
So that would not be changed, that wouldn't need to be changed at all. Okay.
Tom, you have anything you want to
Yeah, I would just a couple comments. First of all, thank you all for considering what we're proposing here today. We really appreciate it. You might say, why are we asking for this now? It's been 25 years, since we bought our first piece of land out there. I will tell you, in addition to working at Corporex, I'm the chairman of the board for 2 years of Triad, and we've been working hard to attract businesses to the area. And as Emmy said, corporate America has changed. Their decision-making process has changed a lot. And they wait much longer to make decisions, and then they need it immediately. And what we have found, and what Triad's doing, it's not just Corporex, but across all 3 counties, is trying to get as many pad-ready sites available as we can, because we found out, and there's no secret, the company we went after hard with was a company called Amgen, a pharmaceutical company. And we got down to, after several state competition, down to 2 sites. This site, the site back on the knob there is kind of in the middle of the stars, and a site in Columbus. And they went into the site in Columbus because it was a farm field and they could start grading, within weeks. These sites back here, some of them have 60, 70 feet of fill necessary to get them level. So it's a challenging site. And when you really look at what has developed in Circleport over the years, it's mostly been the Boone County side versus the Erlanger side, and that's simply a function of topography. The land that was located in Boone County was much more level, flat. It was the old Damashko farm, and and the stuff that's in Erlanger, it's just rough topography. At Dry Creek Valley, from the top where those roads are down to the bottom of the Dry Creek Valley is about 230 feet. So it's quite a hillside. Any other questions?
So Jack, can we talk a little bit about what type of legislation is required at the December meeting if we would like to move forward?
Yeah, we would just need a resolution, is all we would need at this point. All of the ordinances and things like that will be later down the process once the IRBs are issued. And I think we basically have everything worked out with the schools at this point. Don't we kind of have a general understanding? I know they're formally meeting with their legislative bodies, but it seems like we have a meeting of the minds. So it would just literally be an inducement resolution is all we would need at the December meeting, which the fine gentleman there in the middle will be preparing for us. Mr. Spohr, who was not recognized. And I'm sorry if you wanted to maintain your anonymity. You are the grandfather of IRBs.
Please
Jim
call me
Parsons
if-
learned from you, right?
Please call me if you have questions that pop up in your mind after this evening. I'm happy to chat through things.
So we'll go ahead and, seeing not a tremendous amount of,
Yeah, we'll be ready to go,
Questions?
assuming, again, the others, the fiscal court's great. They're just going to do what we do. And I think we have things now worked out with the schools after a little bit of a give and take from the developer. So I think we're good to go.
which is very much appreciated. Thank you. All right. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it. Okay, the next item on the agenda, we'll go ahead and talk about the flagship park ordinance. Just a little bit of background, we had met as a staff to talk about what our recommendation would be if we were to either get rid of the ordinance or keep the ordinance, or what are the different options here. Bill will be able to talk about what we discussed as a staff recommendation. And then I know that there are some individuals here that would like to be able to have a moment to speak. So we'll be able to open it up to the floor. Bill, if you want to.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So as you recall, at the last council meeting, we received a lot of public comment about the use of Flagship Park. Originally, it was on the table to strike the language that prohibits the use of Flagship Park by organized athletic teams. Then at last council meeting, we heard a lot of public comment for keeping it the same. So since that meeting, we had an internal staff meeting that involved Sherry's department. They are the ones that have the guidelines for the reservation and permitting of the parks, and we also included Public Works, Peter Glenn and Kevin Quinn. They're the ones that maintain the parks. In general, what staff feels is if we would go ahead and strike the language, we would still have enough control over the park, Flagship Park in particular, through our internal administrative guidelines that govern the permitting and the reservation of the park facilities. We feel it would be a bit self-regulating because, as you know, there are no formal ball fields in Flagship Park, and so that would really limit any activity to more of practices or scrimmages because, they wouldn't have regulation fields to be playing on. Parking seems to be the main concern. And what we could do is if we keep to our current practice of limiting reservations to one event per day in a park, we feel we can control how much activity is going on there, which would then help control the parking. In addition, parking is a bit regulated, regulated, I guess is a good word, limited at Flagship. And we could further control that by the groups that we do permit, keeping the counts relevant to a proportional number of parking spaces, somewhere perhaps in the half to two-thirds of the available parking spaces. So with those considerations, we feel that if the language were removed, staff could control the parks enough and the parking situation. However, we've had some comments since the last meeting, and we do feel that we have not really formally discussed through any potential solutions with all parties. So, you know, we would still be open to other ideas.
The other piece of this is that the piece of legislation requires a first and a second reading. And it has been advised by our city attorney that we do not have pieces of legislation that cross council. So we're going from 12 council members to 9 council members starting in January. So to be able to wrap up all necessary pieces of legislation this year prior to starting any new pieces of legislation, since that number is going to change. It complicates matters. You have anything to add about that, or? Okay. So that's part of the reason for not necessarily wanting to make a change to the legislation just yet, but having this available for conversation. Okay. I know there's individuals. Tom?
So let's give the actual history that happened, because I was in charge of that park board when it started. So initially, this was a wooded area back there owned by Erlanger House. It was going to be condos and townhomes was going to go back there. Because of the power lines, they felt that would not be available or a good use for that land where they were going on. So what they did is donate that to the city to become a park. At that time, the original concept included, because it was going to be one of the larger parks in Erlanger, concept included a water feature, basketball courts, storage. Actually, it did have a small ball field in there, play area, volleyball, open area, walking paths, bathroom, and picnic area for part of that. Power lines prohibit many of this, and that's why you kind of have a separation of that park between the power lines. You have the walking path, you have the large open area, you have the kids play area, the picnic area, volleyball, things like that were on there. Original parking on the Deer Chase side was supposed to be 30 to 36 spots. We limited those spots and moved some of those across to the other side of the opening there. That reduced what we had available, which has probably caused some of the congestion that we have right now with just even no events going on, but somebody playing volleyball up there. So, you know, this is one of the, you know, like I said, this is one of the larger parks. So we're down to an open field, walking, picnic, volleyball, and kind of the storage area now. So that's kind of your history that you have, just to give you an idea.
Thanks, Tom. Are there individuals that want to speak? Joe? Oh, I'm sorry, Vicki.
That's okay. I wanted to ask Mrs. Jasper Lucas. I hope I got it all right there. What was the original reason that we were considering? I know there was a scenario. Could you refresh because some of the people in the audience may not know about that either.
Yes. I was contacted by a resident whose daughter is on the Blessed Sacrament cross-country team. And he basically said, you know, why are we being told we can't use Flagship for practices? We've been using it for several years. And so I looked into it, found out that this specific sentence existed in the park usage ordinance, and I asked Peter Glenn at the time, what was the reason behind this? Because I didn't know that even, I mean, that's my own ignorance. I didn't know that specific sentence existed about Flagship. And he mentioned that there were some parking concerns when the park was first put in, and that was the only history that I was given. So I then talked to the coach of the team and got some, you know, background on how their team has grown over the past few years when they've been using it. He said that he had called the city before and was told he could use it. Now, that was before my time, and, I don't know that there was any kind of formal process. I don't think they had a team during 2020, like that fall, because of COVID, but, and then they used it in 2021 and then this past year. And basically, he said somebody showed up and said, we can't be here. And he never knew that they couldn't be because they had been using it. So that's when, that's kind of what brought this up, was there's a group that has been using it, would like to continue using it. Public Works had not received any complaints about it. He said, there's not been any garbage there. They obviously take good care of the space because we're not dealing with any problems. But then obviously we also heard from residents about their concerns about the parking as well. So, like Bill said, there's a lot of people involved here. There's a lot of stakeholders. And I think we just need time to make sure we've gathered all the information so that we can make the right decision, or an educated decision, and that we've looked at any alternative options that might exist for the team to practice, maybe a different park, or is there someplace else or some other way that we can, because we want them, I personally want them to be able to use something. I don't want to see them not be able to practice, whether that's our parks or someplace else. But I also feel like they've been good stewards of the park, and I want to recognize that. And I don't, from what I've heard from any residents, and I'll just mention this, is not a complaint about the group at all. I've not heard anybody complain about the people. It's more the parking. And I think that's our biggest challenge, is figuring out what's the smartest way to allow everybody to be there. So that's my 2 cents. I don't know, that's probably more, Vicki, than you asked for, but I just went ahead and gave my opinion on things too. So, but that's the background on kind of how we got to where we are.
Okay, so that resident is sitting in the audience. Joe, would you like to talk?
Press to talk.
The parent? Okay,
No, I did not speak to her.
okay. All right, so one of
But-
the parents is here.
I'm one of the parents that's here. I have a couple comments, but I also defer a lot of my comments actually to my daughter here in a second, who is one of the runners and can attest to what they do in the park and how they really take care of the park, because I really think that kind of goes back to exactly what Jennifer was talking about, being good stewards. And really, Joe and I were talking about that earlier today, about how well they've taken care of the park and go out of the way to make sure there is no trash, nothing left behind, and almost the park is left just like no one ever knew they were there before they started. But I did want to talk briefly on a couple things, not being a parent of a daughter that runs in this park, but more, one, being an Erlanger resident. I've been here over 6 years, and I'm on record with my wife saying I'm going to die in my house because I love it, and I think the city is amazing. But take the fact I'm even an Erlanger resident out of it, I'm also a very avid runner. I will tell you, I just looked it up beforehand. I never really look at my numbers, but I've already run 2,425 miles this year. And that is not in trying to get an accomplishment, but I've run every single road this city has to offer, and can attest to one of the things that scares me more about anything than running is the danger of running. When I've run roads, and literally even Erlanger roads, running is actually very scary to me at times. And you're kind of like, wait a minute, you run so much, why is that scary? I'm also the head cross-country coach for Notre Dame Academy. And my biggest fear with the girls, and I've talked to them about it, is running on sidewalks and residential roads. Because I've seen, well, actually, I know someone very personally in the last year and a half that was killed running in the city of Covington down a city street that accidentally got hit by a car. I'm not blaming the driver, I'm not blaming the runner, I'm not staying out of exactly what happened to cause the accident. But running on city streets particularly is a very dangerous thing. That's just a fact. When you start factoring in kids, especially the kids we're talking about that are using these parks We're talking about third graders, fourth graders, fifth graders. There was a story earlier this year, a kid riding his bike to school in St. Pius got hit on a residential road going to school. Again, complete accident, but running in outside of parks like we have here, and we're very blessed to have here in the city, can technically be is very dangerous potentially for our kids. But I say that too, as I was talking to my cross-country team earlier this year, of thinking about what did I want them to gain out of this season, was a love of running. When I think about running, running is such an amazing thing that all of us in this room can do, whether how fast, how slow you do it, whether you run a mile, you run 2 miles, a 5K, 10K, you pick the distance. It is such an amazing sport that really allows our children and all of us to escape from the mental challenges we face every day, the stress. Just allows you to get away. That's one of the things that kind of brought me into running. It's such a great way that I can just reset my mind, whether I'm having a stressful day at work, at school, something going on. Maybe Maggie's driving me nuts one day. It just allows me to get away for a little bit. And I really wanted my entire team to do that. But I'm also very keen and aware of the dangers of running down the road. It is every intersection you cross, the drivers are distracted. They can attest. I will attest. I have seen my phone probably more than I should admit when I'm driving in a car. It is a very dangerous, every intersection you come upon, regardless where that intersection's at. Pick the neighborhood, even a light traffic neighborhood is still dangerous. I run in Brightleaf all the time, and Tyson probably can attest. I run down Brightleaf Road because it's easier on my joints to run on pavement than not. But I realize every single turn, even in a neighborhood like that generally doesn't have that much traffic, potentially is a danger where someone could pull out and hit you. I think all this, and kind of where I get back to where I just struggle with this conversation when it first got brought up to me, is I amplify my concerns with the high school team by like tenfold with what our coach Joe deals with our grade school teams. We're dealing, like I said, with kids, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, that run 1 or 2 laps around the park. They get in the field and they stretch. Those are kids that I just terrify thinking about. My youngest daughter, hey, go run down the Turkey Foot and come back. It just scares me. It truly does. And to have an opportunity for them to go to a park like this, to put down their electronic devices and run around this loop that we have built, it's ideal. It is the perfect place to go. I understand the concerns of parking. I've been to that park. I've been to several city events in that park where I've seen cars parked in grasses and every which way because we're having an event in that park, a concert, a meeting or something going on, and there's just not enough parking. I will dispute a little bit under the number of spaces per kids and everything else because I've seen so many parents that come up, they'll drop their kids off with Virtus-trained adults that are going to watch their kids for an hour and a half and leave. That parking, it's more of a congestion when we're dropping off and picking up as opposed to a constant, this hour and a half or hour they're going to be at the park, that every single parking space is taken because the adults have stayed the whole time. They do encourage adults to stay, and that's the other thing I love about this park is the fact it's so big and broad. We can have adults that stand out in the fields, and we can constantly keep an eye on all these kids as they're exercising out in public without having to worry about, hey, they ran down that subdivision. Did all of our kids come back out of that subdivision? And I'll kind of end on this, and I didn't intend to talk about this story, but we had a race earlier this year in Centerville, Ohio, and the race had kind of a 3-loop thing. This farm field was a night race, and the kids loved it. And we were inside the football stadium at Centerville. And they ran back through the second time around, and I started questioning, I'm like, we're missing a runner. And everybody started looking at me like, what do you mean you're missing a runner? I'm like, Ava Philhart, she did not come back through here. Like, where did she go? She went into that farm field. She never came back out of that farm field. And everybody started questioning, are you sure? And I'm like, yes. And we started questioning, like, no, we didn't see her. I left leaving because we were not allowed to go on the farm field. It was a night race. It was closed off. They did not want spectators back there for that reason. Thinking, all I know is I had a runner that went in that field. She never came back out of that field. And her parents are somewhere around here, and I don't have eyes on her. As a coach, it still sinks to my heart right now thinking, I don't know where she's at. I ended up finding out she had her time of the month as a young lady and didn't know what to do, and she peeled off the race and just went back to the tent and was crying in her tent. But I say that under the notion this park is such a great park for children of this age group that is coming here in this group to run, because we as adults can safely keep eyes on them. We can see where they're at. They don't have to worry about the crossing of traffic. They don't have to worry about all the other things that I worry about when I run. And yet they can get out and exercise and put down their electronic devices. And that's where it burns me that we are even having this conversation, but trying to understand the importance of this park particularly, and why we're so special here in Erlanger and even Kenton County to have a facility like this that can allow our kids to come and exercise. So I'll turn it over to my daughter, and she can talk a little bit more about really how the students take care of the park.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Maggie Durrett, a 7th grader at St. Pius X School in Edgewood, Kentucky. And first, before anything, I want to say I'm not here to argue. I just want to show you guys where I stand in this situation. I run there. I run everywhere I run, but I try to stay safe about it. So if I am running, I try to run with my dad, my mom, my friends, someone who, if anything happens to me, someone will know. And the park is, like, I always see, when we go to the practices, I always see the little kids, and I'm always making sure that they're not disrupting anyone, or they're being appropriate at the park and running and then stretching appropriately and then leaving without disrupting anyone. So that's my job as a 7th grader who has to watch kindergartners and 1st graders constantly, just not like babysitting them, just making sure that they all get back to the tent, they're not disrupting anyone, they're not being disrespectful. And I just think that I'm not saying if we do lose our chances at the park, I will understand. It's probably for a good reason, but as a 7th grader, I know that I probably am a little too young to be in this, but I just want to show you guys where I stand in this, and I always see them, and they always clean up after themselves, they always are respectful, and I always just think that the Erlanger Park flagship is a very good park to go to because it has a good amount of distance, it has a bigger loop for the bigger kids, and it has a tinier loop, and there's always good areas to stop in, there's benches, and I think it's just a really good area to be in. But I do understand if we get this opportunity for taking away by other residents because they're unhappy with whatever situation it may be. But I do personally know my coach, and he always calls before the beginning of the season, making sure he can use the park, and he calls at the end of the season, asking if there's any complaints. And this year just happened, there just might be a little problem, and hopefully we can solve it soon. I understand if we have to get moved to President's Park or a track, whatever it may be, but that's just where I wanted to show you where I stand in this, and that I'm not trying to pick a fight. I'm just here to be almost like a witness, but not like in a mean way, just show you guys where I stand, and that it's not just because I know the coach, my dad's a coach. It's not because my whole family loves running. It's just because my friend, if she could come here, she would probably be here because I always run with her. And she would probably say the same things as I would. They're always very respectful, and we're respectful. We run, even with us being as young as we are. We run on big roads. We always make sure that we're respectful to anyone. We had one time at DeVille where this particular lady, we got in single file so she could have her area, but she was just a little disrespectful. That was the only problem we had while running in a park. And that wasn't even in Erlanger, it was just in DeVille. But that was only one time, and it wasn't particularly our fault. I'm not saying that we're perfect. We should just stay at the park. I'm not saying anything like that. We're not perfect. We always even make mistakes, but we always try to stay as respectful as we can, and that is just where I stand in this conversation.
Thank you. Mr. Hermes.
think a lot of people don't realize how scary it can be to stand up at that podium and talk, and how intimidating it can be too. And I think you did a great job. And if you're willing to coach me on public speaking, I would appreciate that, Maggie.
Thank you. Okay, then we have some other residents. Sure. If you'd like to just come and state your name, please.
My name's Alicia Lindstead, and I am not a good public speaker. Actually, this makes me very nervous. I'll probably start crying, but then I'll keep talking. It's just nothing to do with where we are. I had cancer treatment, and when I feel strongly about something, it comes out like emotionally, and it's embarrassing, but I tried to just be graceful about it, and I'll just keep talking. So again, this has nothing to do with the situation here. I am very nervous. I am not a good public speaker. So again, I wish I had your poise, and I don't. And I am very unorganized. I don't like to be unorganized. I've had just a lot of personal things with my mother, and so I'll just keep on talking. I am a resident of Erlanger. I have been a resident since, I think, 1996. I am around in the neighborhood by where the park is. It was not a park when we moved in. I do not know what organized sports are. You know, I am not specifically against your running. I honestly don't know what you guys have in mind, like what you want to allow, what teams, like what type of practices. I am a mother. I have 4 children. All 4 of my children have played multiple sports: track, indoor, outdoor, basketball, swimming, soccer, just community sports, just us playing in the park sports, pickup game, you know, for fun, neighbor kids, and then also, you know, club type sports. I love sports. I actually was just honored at my high school for my sports career. And that's not like, oh, I hate talking about myself, but I love sports. I value safety. My child, I drive him to school. He does not go to school in Erlanger. He does not take a bus. I saw him almost get hit by 2 cars just crossing a street down in Latonia with the light, with another high schooler. They're in high school. He's tall. You can't miss him. And these are even parents of kids. So again, I understand the safety. I mean, I'm Vertus trained. You know, it's terrifying. I have been a Cub Scout leader, a Girl Scout leader. I worked at Children's Hospital until my cancer took that away from me. Sorry, I'll just keep talking. Sorry, that really just bothers me. So it's like children, I love children. Children should be able to go out. They should be able to play. They should not have to worry about other, you know, traffic, other adults, you know, being mean to them, not feeling safe in the park. So again, that park has been very special. It's been special to me as an adult. It's been special to me as a mother. I guess the point that I want to make is I really don't know what organized sports you have in mind. What I have against, you know, if there's teams, what happens is, again, our little streets. I mean, we can't even hardly cross on Narrows Road right down there with the big flashing light, and that, where cars almost don't want to stop. Or, you know, it's like all that increased traffic, and there's nothing like a parent, you know, and you think that we're all good parents, but they'd want to go pick their kid up. And it's just like so much increased traffic through there. There are only so many spots. It'd be great if it was set up. I mean, I am all for, I wish we had in Erlanger way more places for our kids to play. I hate going into the little neighborhoods, you know, and you just feel like you're invading, like you're disrupting. But the kids have to go somewhere. Adults, it's not just for the children. It's for adults. And what I don't want about organized sports is there's only that bathroom facility. You know, as a person who has a lot of side effects from cancer, bathrooms are very important to me, just like they're important to other people. I mean, there's times I can't go places because of bathroom. You know, is there a bathroom close? You know, and it's like when you have more organized teams coming, and again, I have no idea, are you talking soccer? Are you talking only allowing a small cross-country team? I have been up there. I go up to that park a lot, all different hours, you know, like during open hours. But, you know, I have gone up there where there have been cross-country, and they are little kids and things like that. But, you know, I had to, like, you know, go off the track at times and different things like that. But it's like, okay, they're kids, you know, they're trying to be there. But there was also, like, some high school kids, like boy high school kids, and they're just doing conditioning and things like that. You know, they're just trying to better themselves. I'm all for, you know, athletics. I hate electronic devices. I love that the kids want to get out there and play. The adults that take their own time, most of them are volunteers. But you have, like, when that comes with it, you know, not everybody picks up their trash. I mean, that they've been great about that. You know, but the thing is if you are talking about bringing teams in, you have that little picnic area up there. The people use that for birthday parties and things. I mean, we've been up there we walk because, you know, we're close, but there's not been enough parking for that kind of thing. You know, got families who are trying to enjoy that. If you bring in, you know, organized sports, I'm not sure if you're talking only doing it during the evening hours or after school hours, or you're talking Saturdays or Sundays. You know, there's people who come. I see people of all ethnicities up there, and it seems almost like the more off times are certain people, maybe they feel more comfortable up there, and it's awesome. There's autistic kids that I have seen up there who they're just swinging on the swings, they're yelling, you know, at top of their lungs, they're letting out all their energy. That's what the park is supposed to be there for. But when you've got people like coming and going, and again, I know you said limiting to one event and things like that, but you know, you do have other groups there as well, like the yoga and all that kind of stuff. I love that the park's there. I wish there was more programs. Again, I did scouts and things like that. I cannot tell you how many badges my children have earned in that park, or how many homework assignments because they had to get out of the house. You know, stressful for people who have health issues, you know, and it's like there's adults who want to be up there too. And you know, the adults should be thought about as well. You know, they want to go up there, they have to work, they can only be there at certain times, and if there's a group that's taking over, I'm not taking over, sorry, wrong language, because that they're there, you know, their presence is there. And yes, it's great that you do have adults scattered. It's necessary. You have to keep eyes on those kids, every single kid at every single time. And it's stressful. I've been in charge of, I don't know how many groups of kids in all these different public places, even in your own school, your own neighborhood. But the thing is that, you know, it's like you can't accommodate everyone, but you know, adults should be able to have their fun. They should be able to come up there and be stress-free as well, and be able to work out and do things like that, and not have another group. And again, if you're talking like teams playing, and you know, it's like hard. There's only one little shelter, and a team comes, and yay, it's great that the parents are there. But it's like, you know, I'm not saying specifically with this group, so please don't think that. But I have, again, been at all different events, all different cities, all different places, and the teams, a lot of them just come and they spread out all over, and it's like, wait, you know, you gotta, guys, you know, there's other people who are trying to enjoy this too. This is their 1 hour that they get a day. This is their time off. And, you know, it's like they want to spend time with their kids. They want to be here. And it's like, what, are you going to put in more bathrooms? You know, there's only the two bathrooms. And, you know, places to sit. I mean, I personally, if we're talking about the park, it's like you have, you go, I could tell you exactly where the loops are, and again, no criticism, anything that we have is wonderful, but it's like there's a bench and then another bench, and what's next to the bench? A garbage can. I sit there and I like get physically sick because you're smelling the garbage can, and it's like, can't we have more like picnic tables? Maybe that would help. Maybe that would help if you allow like people to have their running and things like that. But my thing is I do not know what you guys are planning. I have no idea. I don't know who you allow to come in. Is it the little kids? Is it teenage kids? Is it, well, what about the adults? What about adult teams? I love that the volleyball court's there. I sit at my house, I feel sick half the time, like my own health issues, and I love to hear the people enjoying the park. I can hear them at the volleyball courts. I will go out there and just sit and watch them. It's like awesome that we have this great facility, and it should be shared by all. And it's a matter of, we don't know, I don't think other people know, like, what you have in mind, because one team is like, oh no, we want to do this, or no, we want to have just like little mini soccer, little pee-wee things. You don't even need a field, you just throw up the 2 little pop-up goals and, little lines or whatever. But it's like, I don't know what you have planned, and I just know that when you do have groups of people coming, and again, the parking, and it just, the traffic, people are like racing to get their kids. And even if it's just, oh, we're all just picking up and whatever, I've seen it, they're distracted. You have all these Uber drivers. Our roads aren't in great shape right now anyway, and it's like, I know I'm going on. It's like, and then nature, one other thing too, is like, that is one thing that is so special to me, is the nature. Everything is just being disrupted. And when you have, if you're talking, again, teams coming in, playing and things like that, it's like, where do the birds go? There's plenty of outdoor space, but it's like, it just keeps getting taken away. Like, there's always this huge area, and now it just keeps getting mowed closer and closer. And the animals have no place to go, and you go down the road, and they're getting hit all over the place. And it's like, I don't know what the answer is, because I don't know, again, what you guys have in mind. And how do you say no to one team and yes to another team? And, again, it's just food for thought for you guys. I appreciate the time of me talking. But again, it's just like there's lots of people to consider. And that park in particular is it's not a special park that the city of Erlanger, us residents in that little community, we should only have our rules. I don't believe in that. I believe, I am a person, I like to look at all the viewpoints and how does it accommodate people and how does it not accommodate people, and what are the pros and the cons. And I feel like I don't know any of that information. So I'm just throwing things out there for you all, and then hopefully, again, who do you consider as a organized team sport? Practices, games, things like that. So it'd be great to know that kind of thing. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll speak to that a little bit, and then I'm going to ask Sherry to also speak to our current policies. So we have 12 different parks within the city. And what we have been working on is master planning all of those parks one at a time, and understanding what that park can accommodate with the existing infrastructure, the parking. Does it have water? Does it have electric? Does it have a restroom? Does it need a restroom? And understanding all of these different pieces of what makes that park exist right now, and then what would need to be added to accommodate certain activities. So our sports park, what we would consider our biggest park, is Silver Lake Park. So it has the basketball courts, it has the tennis courts, it has the soccer fields, and the 2 baseball fields. It has a volleyball court, and then it has a large playground in the middle. It has, the bathroom was built just recently, and it was built to accommodate the level of traffic that that park supports. So that is our most trafficked park in the entire city. So from a technical standpoint, for Silver Lake Park, the baseball lottery occurs and the soccer field lottery occurs, which allows team sports to apply and reserve time at those particular spots in that park. There's basketball, but that has to be reserved. So we have the Blacktop League that typically plays throughout the summer at Silver Lake, but it is a permitted use, and they call and reserve that court. Let's see here. Spring Valley Park has the baseball field that is also part of the lottery, and that's for organized sports. The soccer field at Spring Valley is also a part of the lottery. Are there any other parks that we have a lottery for? So all of the other parks are either considered pocket parks, or there's not a field that is dedicated to a particular sport. So the only fields that we allow organized sports are actually fields, and they were built to accommodate that amenity, and the parking coincides with the amenity. So for Flagship, there is no soccer field, and there's not going to be a soccer field. There is no basketball court. There's not going to be a basketball court. There's no baseball diamond. So therefore, we can't reserve that park for that purpose. There's a track that runs around the field or the park, which would be then accommodated or could be accommodated based on the number of attendees, and that's what we've kind of talked about, understanding the parking that exists there and figuring out how do we permit this use within a certain amount of guidelines. Again, we're trying to make everybody happy, and that's very difficult and not always possible. However, there's not a soccer field there, there's not a basketball court there, and there's not a baseball diamond. So those sports cannot take place at Flagship. We don't have the amenity there, and the amenity was not followed up with parking, so it can't be accommodated. We are confident that if we make this change, we're able to implement the rules that already exist in our other parks, that we already have processes and procedures in place to handle this type of request. We're more than confident that we can handle the potential individuals that want to come and rent or use that facility. Yes?
So you do have a volleyball court there, sand.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where you would have sand volleyball be?
There's a residents go and have games there, but it's a pickup. There are residents around the park that go and play games there, but it's kind of a pickup. Anybody that wants to play can go and play. It's not an organized team.
Right, and I see that witness that my kids actually get there with their friends, and they Friday nights sometimes, Sunday nights, whatever, and it's awesome. So are you opening that up to like potential, I don't even know if there are like to reserve for our groups, because I know there's like the different church groups that have come and different things like that. Are you, is that something, or is it open and say whoever can play, or do you guys have any plans on having that be reserved as well?
So that is one that is at Silver Lake Park that we do not reserve. So Silver Lake Park has a volleyball court, but that is not one of the sports that we reserve. It's not one that we ever receive any kind of official team sport that is requiring a volleyball field or volleyball court. So we do not permit for volleyball. Sure, sure.
For the sake of the public meeting, what you're saying now is not recorded at all, and nobody has any, if somebody's watching this from either online or in the future, they have no idea what you're saying. So it's just a silence. If you wouldn't mind coming up to the, if you have more that you wanted to talk about, come up to the podium and. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that people can't talk. I'm just saying that instead of discussing from the seat, come up and discuss it.
Hi, my name's Teresa Conley, and I live on 4015 Deer Chase. I'm the only driveway on the way back to the parking lot. I've been there since '96. Before it was a park, I've dealt with all kinds of people blocking me in. People come and fish, and even though we have a freaking parking lot, do they use it? No, they park on the street. Still, Kate, sometimes I came back out of my driveway. They fish it all night, call on them. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be the person that has to call when we have an organized sports because they're parking up and down the streets and we can't get in and out of the driveway. When we have Shakespeare in a park, I don't complain. It's one night a week, one night a month. They're up and down the street. They're parking on the wrong side of the street, wrong direction. Nothing, I don't say anything, it's one night. But what's going to happen when we start allowing more and more people? I mean, before the parking lot, I would have people drive in my yard. You know, this is my concern. I've had people pee in my yard. Right out in the middle of the daylight. So, I mean, the parking is my big concern.
So if we were to limit the number of participants, does that rectify the situation?
I mean, what does that mean? I don't even know what that, if you participate, I mean, can you stop somebody from parking on the street or in front of the houses?
No, I mean, it's a public street, so you
Right.
can't.
So when you're a participant, I mean.
But if they block you in, I mean.
Unfortunately, his group hasn't bothered me. I mean, I see him running. Actually, I didn't even know it was an organized thing. I thought it was like Girls on the Run or something like that. But I didn't notice a lot of parking there. It's just for some of the other ones. So if we start having something every night, it's going to be a big deal.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of put this out to you. You understand the situation that we're in, right?
I understand.
What is your suggestion? Because
I don't know if
we're
there's
open
suggestion.
for it.
I don't know that there's a suggestion. That's what
Okay.
I'm here, to find out what can you do?
We can limit.
Okay, you know, because here's what also happens. So, you know, as you're going back, you have the lake. So as soon as you pass my driveway and you go through, there's not supposed to be any parking through that until they get around to the parking lot because of the way it's set up right there. You know, I tell people all the time, hey, you're going to get a ticket. You probably need to move. If I'm outside, I don't mind doing that. But you wouldn't believe how rude some people are. And you guys can't do anything about that. And, you know, it's just, we've dealt with it for a long time. So I just, you know, I love where I live, and I think you guys have done a great job. I mean, I think I've talked to you up at the park how much I like it, except for the geese, but those geese are dirty. But I've also seen kids come back, teenagers come back and go to use the park, and I've seen 2 mallets get run over because they're speeding. They won't slow down and let the duck cross. So, I mean, these are, you know, different things too, so.
Yeah, I think we're in a situation where we're trying to make it work. And we're trying to figure out how to say yes
I want the
within.
parking situation rectified.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you, like they haven't, but if you let another cross-country team come in, who's to say they're not gonna bring more traffic or don't pick up after themselves,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah, that mean, that's definitely always a, yeah, of course.
So I've got a few comments really for both speakers. One is, you know, we did talk with staff, and we feel we can help control situations, present or if things change, with some of the guidelines we have on the books. So regarding potential another cross-country team, if we have a permitting process, if there's another team there that day, our current process is only one event per day. So Team 2 would be told no for that day.
Right, I understand that, but if you have a team every night of the week
Okay.
practicing, you know, one team might not, they might have 10 cars on both sides of the park. The next night, there might be 100 cars. How do you do that?
Well, you know.
And I know there's no answer.
Yeah, our prior speaker made a comment, which I think we all agree with, and that is our parks are built for everybody. We just have to figure out a fair way to govern their use. Regarding some of the comments with litter and trash, we have a public works department. And
They're there every day. I see them every day.
Yep, they're there every day, definitely every weekday. Back to the permitting process. If we would permit to a group that would vandalize, damage, litter our parks, and we could trace that back to them, we would not permit to them anymore. They would not be welcomed back. Okay? Another thing, as far as the parks are built for everybody, we do have Sundays reserved for no reservation day. Sunday is a recreational use family type of day. We don't let organized events, other than maybe a city event, occur on a Sunday. So, you know, there is a day of the week already reserved, actually a weekend day, for, you know, non-scheduled, non-formal use of the parks. Yes. And regarding parking, I believe we have a city ordinance that prohibits people from blocking driveways. I think it came up recently in a different situation. There is a limit to how close people are allowed to park to a driveway.
I understand that.
And
when
if they're reported,
you don't live there, you don't see it, it
I know,
happens quite often.
but
so.
we're not going to catch everyone, but
I
if they're reported, we can enforce that.
Right, I mean, you don't want to be that person that has to call on people.
No,
Trying to do something.
but we need help too. We need eyes and ears. We can't be everywhere all the time. But once the word gets out that these ordinances are enforced, especially near high traffic areas like a park, then people are going to catch on. Most people, there's always going to be somebody, and they can get and pay their ticket. But other people are going to learn and be more respectful.
Well, I hope so. That's all I have. So,
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
My name is Kathy Vogt, and I'm a resident in the Lakemont community. Both of my daughters were runners. One of them was a cross-country runner also. And I understand what you're saying because you want your kids to be safe, and I agree with you on that. My question to you is, but I go up there with my granddaughters, and other people go up there with their grandkids and want to walk around that park too. So how does that work then with the park? If you have cross-country teams up there running, I don't understand how the residents or other people that come in with kids and other runners within the neighborhood, how does that work out with that? That's what I want to know.
I would ask, how has it been working?
For me, I haven't had an issue. I don't know about other people that have been up there. What time do you guys usually run up there? Do you have a certain time? 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock at night? Okay.
well, I'm not there at that time, but I was just wondering about other people that, are up there with walking or running or whatever. But I have not had that problem. Are there said there are no other parks where they could run? I mean, I know this is a park for,
Jennifer?
That's one of the reasons that we wanted additional time to discuss this, because we're looking at what are the alternative options and because of the capacity needs. That's why I said earlier, we want to try to find a solution that's beneficial for everyone.
Right.
And based on the number of people that they have, we're trying to look at, okay, is there someplace else that works? As Joe mentioned, the pathway in Flagship is helpful, but every park that we have doesn't have that. So that was one of the reasons that we were discussing needing additional time was, are there alternative options that would be more conducive to this particular group, that would allow them the space and the parking that they need, because of the size limitations. I mean, we're obviously going to have size limitations at any park for certain size groups. So, you can't have 1,000 people even at Silver. Well, you could maybe have 1,000 people, but maybe not running. That was probably a bad example. But anyway, that's what we're trying to look at, is what are the alternative options that are available to them, and is there something that's more suitable?
so then my other question is, are you saying, I'm sorry, what?
I was just going to say something about the path. I'm not trying to be rude to you, but when you were talking about that, because I have been up there when they've been up there, and I don't know if there's another group that comes up there too, because they seem like older kids as well. But, I could not, walk on the path. I couldn't have the person I was walking with. We did get off the path. And again, you want to accommodate their children and things like that, but there are, again, other people too, and it's like not everyone is accommodating. There are a lot of elderly people. That was one thing I wanted to say too, that walk their dogs at all different hours, and they're not as steady. I mean, I'm not as steady myself, so it's like, again, how do you work it where you say, okay, well, for this hour and a half, no matter what, and they're this group of little kids. There were some older kids as well, but not, all of them are going to be like, oh, I'm only going to run single file right through here. I mean, they're uncoordinated at times. They're trying to get their momentum going up those hills and things like that. You got to move out of their way, and that's okay, but not everyone wants that either. And sometimes that's the other person's only time to be there at the park as well, enjoying their time with their stroller or whatever. And again, I mean, I'm for everyone. I see everyone's point of view.
Go ahead.
And I definitely think that we're going to have additional discussion around this, because what I don't want to see is the city build these guardrails specific to renting out the park, or removing the language from the ordinance, and then building the guardrails that then prohibit the very teams that run currently. If it boxes them out, it seemingly nullifies the entire point. We also don't necessarily, and I say we because I can just see the complaints rolling in, where if it goes to organized sports, one or two or three times a week, I don't know how frequently y'all run, but I'm thinking it's twice a week. Yes. So then it becomes, could it be 5 days a week, 6 days a week? Because as Mr. Wolfeck said, Sundays are off limits, but that opens it up to those other days, to where it could make the issue then become much larger. So I think that there's additional discussion that definitely needs to be made, to where if the ordinance is changed, is it going to be conducive to all parties involved?
Well, and I feel also that you're opening the door. I mean, I have no problem. I had no problem with you all running. I mean, that didn't conflict with my time. But if I'm up there walking, and I happen to go up there and they're running, then I don't know. I guess I'd go somewhere else. But so you're opening the door. So is there going to be more than just one team running? I mean, Jessica, did you say that it's just one time a day per week, or one time a day?
When we permit, it's just one One a
One
day.
team per day.
For the fields that we do actually have permits for.
Okay.
So would that eliminate any cross-country meet ever taking place?
Correct.
Okay.
There's no way that we could accommodate a cross-country meet.
Well, if you're opening it
Huh?
up for sports, I
This-
mean,
But
that's,
but what we have been saying is the attendees, the parking, a cross-country meet would be an insane amount of individuals. That park would not accommodate that.
well, if you had an elementary meet, I don't know, if you have, a small team, you only run, my son runs varsity cross-country for St. Henry, and I know, I'm a runner too. Running is a great sport, but the park doesn't accommodate.
It doesn't accommodate a meet.
No.
Yeah. It could not withstand that parking.
So we are looking for other alternatives, and it does sound like we have a lot of runners near Flagship Park. I would be a little curious as to what resources, other resources you all use, and could they be shared with the groups that want to run at Flagship?
They are for visual team, right? It's Blessed Sacrament.
The team does run under the name Blessed Sacrament. It's majorly made up of Erlanger and St. Pius teams. I'd say about 60 to 70% of them are St. Pius. The other coach, that's not Joe Nylander, is actually the St. Pius gym teacher. But because of how organized sports are set up in Kenton County, they just all kind of go under one name. Very similar to the Notre Dame elementary team. There are 4 or 5 different schools that pull into that, and they just enter and meet as elementary teams. But very similar to what you're talking about. The Flagship is a great training park for people, but being a cross-country coach and someone who's designed courses, you could never run a cross-country meet realistically there without running around in circles over and over. So it's more a great place to train and get a small group of kids together to run, but not technically host a cross-country meet. But a good chunk of the team, even though it does say Blessed Sacrament, do not belong to Blessed Sacrament. They are actually pulling kids from all other elementary schools that are looking to get together and run.
So are there other facilities that are conducive to runners that we should be considering?
The individuals that have spoken and talked about them being runners, I mean, if we have other suggestions, I mean, we're looking for anything here.
Yeah, actually, I am asking you. You had mentioned you have children that run for St. Henry's.
Yes, they run on the streets.
They run on the streets? Mm-hmm. Okay.
And even when they were in middle school, same.
Yeah, and we all acknowledge the safety concerns with that, too. So.
What is the Richardson Park, Kenton County, where the golf course, old golf course was, is that a option? I'm not for sure what's the name of that event? Fox Run, yeah, Fox Run.
So the city of Erlanger does not control that. That is controlled by Kenton County.
Okay.
But that may be an option.
I'm not
Okay.
sure of any other places.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. Okay, well, I appreciate the conversation and the different perspectives. I mean, we're trying to understand if there is a solution that meets everybody's needs. We like to be able to figure out how to say yes within certain bounds. It's kind of funny how this came to be. Like, this didn't even come to be from a complaint. It's so crazy that we're having this conversation and it wasn't even coming from a complaint. It was just happenstance. So, obviously you girls are doing a great job, and you're honoring what you have said and being respectful and tidying up after yourselves if you're seeing any garbage, and that's so appreciated. So this is not coming from a complaint whatsoever. So thank you for being good stewards of our park. You are to be commended for that. the conversation's not over. When is cross-country season over? It's done, right? It's done. Okay. So we've got some time to have this conversation. We have a new council coming in. I mean, there's only one new individual. However, the number will change from 12 to 9. So we'll be able to have a conversation further. I'm assuming that we're just gonna not have a second reading in December, because we tabled it and it would not come back on to the agenda unless you all tell me to put it on the agenda. So we'll have it continued to be tabled and we'll pick this up. The way it'll work, if we bring it back up for a second reading and a vote in January, it'll be at a public meeting, which will have availability for public comment. However, I don't see that actually occurring. I think we'll probably wait for a caucus meeting to have a similar conversation like we have had tonight with the new council. And then potentially, if there's any action, it would be in February, just to kind of set some expectations of timeline. It would be a first reading if there is some substantive change to the ordinance that had been read. So the ordinance that exists was striking through the athletic team prohibition. So if this is decided by the next council that we want to move forward, then it's just a second reading and a vote. But if there are changes to this, or we just throw this out, then it'll either start over as a first reading or it'll die. Rebecca?
We tabled it before the first reading, so it would be a first and then a second. We never had the first reading.
I think that's right. Yeah, I don't think we ever had a first reading.
Diana?
I just had a question for Sherry, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know someone mentioned the shelters, that if they come to the park, the shelter's taken. I know at some parks I have came up, got the permit, did things with my kids, I had parties. Do they still reserve the shelters if someone wants to have an event at the shelters at the park?
Yes, we do reserve the shelters. It's for Erlanger residents only. Most of the time, it's typically Saturdays and Sundays, but sometimes occasionally during the week.
And one more question too, because I think there is a lot of discussion we should have. And if we did not allow the cross-country runners running at the park, who would say, I mean, you are just there twice a week, right, when cross-country season, what would prevent like a neighborhood of runners, like, let's just go meet at the park and run 5 days a week? And would people complain because we weren't really a team or anything, but I decided to get my friends up 5 days a week and run at the park? And would that be an issue? So I think there's a lot of discussion and stuff like, is it okay for a team to be there 2 days a week? Or I'm not an organized team, but I'm getting a bunch of my friends every day, Monday through Friday, to go run. And we could also be classified as, I guess, like a nuisance or something too to some people with us driving our own cars and parking. So I think there is a lot of conversation to still go along with this if we bring it back up in January. Thank you.
It's a valid point. That's a valid point.
But just to your point, are you going to get 30 women together or 30, people together, friends together to run up the park? It's a small, usually it's a small group of people.
I think, but what Diana's saying is that there's nothing that would prohibit a group of individuals gathering together at the park and running
Right.
on a regular basis,
Right.
without them calling themselves a team or an organized sport. Just like a team can go up and just form at and play volleyball. There's nothing prohibiting them from.
Right, I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean? Like,
Right,
because there's absolutely no way to govern that.
right, right.
Okay.
And I was just going to make a comment. I was just throwing it out there, just looking at all angles, because I think that's our job for discussion.
Right.
I'm not a personal runner. I wouldn't be gathering friends 5 days a week to go run. But, but there could be people, you know what I'm saying? It's like if we're telling them they can't come 2 days a week because they're an organized cross-country team of children, but maybe you're a runner and you decide, well, I want to have 20 friends meet up there 5 days a week, and you're putting 20 cars, which could be the problem.
And I
So
think that's very rare.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
I
I'm
think what
saying it
you're
could
bringing it up, but I
happen.
think that would be
Yeah.
a very rare thing to happen
Yeah,
there.
I was just saying, looking at all angles, what could happen,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of discussion
Right.
before we make a decision, I think, as well,
Right.
too, if we're bringing it back up in
I mean,
January.
I go up there and walk with some friends, you know, at different days, different times of the days, but, yeah, I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go ahead and close this discussion, as we do have one other thing, and I'm sorry. We have one other thing that we need to talk about on the agenda. Board appointments. Okay, so, Board of Adjustments, and I'm looking for help here. Board of Adjustments needs one member. If you all can think of a member or somebody that might be interested, can you please send me an email? Board of Adjustments. We have one individual that she never got sworn in, has not attended a single meeting, and we need to replace. Yes.
What type of, I don't know if background's the right word, or skills really isn't there. What type of skill set, I guess, should that person have? I mean, I've watched Board of Adjustment meetings,
Yeah.
but I don't know if we're looking for a specific skill set or what.
Tyson, can you?
Resident of Erlanger. That will show up. I mean, seriously. No, really, it's meant to be a board of people who are residents. And people, so the Board of Adjustments looks at variances that people are asking that are dimensional. That's all they look at, are dimensional variances. So there's someone who's looking at putting a shed in their backyard that's closer than what's allowable by 2 feet, or whatever it might be. And the goal of the board is to be a resident that can put themselves in that person's shoes or the shoes of someone that might live behind them. That's the purpose.
I would just, and I mean, I guess I'm kind of answering my own question. The only thing I would add to that is, having watched the meetings, I also think that there are businesses who approach the Board of Adjustments as well, and that person, a member of that board, would need to see things maybe from a business owner's perspective. I'm not saying everybody on the board needs to be a business owner. Obviously, they'll be a resident of Erlanger. We know that much. But I personally feel like it would be helpful. I know, I mean, some of the more lengthy meetings that I've watched were about businesses and signs. And you know, yes, the variance was small, but it tends to have a bigger impact because it's a business, I think, and it's maybe more noticeable to residents. So I just think it would be helpful to have somebody who has some business knowledge. I'm not saying they need to be a business owner, but I think that is something that would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I get Tyson's point. Somebody that shows up, resident, I get it. Because to be honest with you, if you have the motivation and you're showing up, we're going to be able to train you and understand some of the different issues that might come to you. There's required continuing education and training hours. So showing up is number one. So Board of Adjustments, the Local Appeals Board, which has not met in Sherry's knowledge ever, since 1982. Okay, so this is, Local Appeals Board is if there is a issue with a building inspection that somebody wants to appeal what the building inspector has given. We do not need this board any longer because we do not have building inspection within our organization any longer. So we will have a piece of legislation that will abolish our local appeals board. Just wanted to let you know that. It's a great idea.
So if there is I know we don't have the inspections, but does PDS have an appeals board? Okay,
Yes.
just making, so there's still a mechanism in place
Absolutely.
for someone to appeal it. It's just not our board to
Right, so
appoint.
the legislation that we would have for the next meeting is just abolishing the Erlanger Appeals Board and transferring all of, in the next 40 years, if there's an appeal, then it would go to the joint Kenton County Appeals Board,
Yeah.
of
So-
which we can
and
put
to
a
be
number
honest-
on, I believe, right? Isn't that what Sharmely said? I think we can place a person on that, maybe.
It is county,
Okay, all right.
but we can talk to the county if we really want to put somebody
We
on it.
struggle to fill our own boards, right?
1982 is the last time that this board met. And to be honest with you, the PDS board, I talked to Sharm about it, it doesn't even meet either. Like, in her time being with PDS, it's never met. It only has its organizational meetings once a year. So, okay, PDS, I am wanting to reappoint myself and Hermes as the backup. OKI, myself. Tom, are you still up for Health Department? Yes. Sweet, awesome, thank you. And then the only other two boards that are coming due is the Codes Enforcement. We have two positions that are coming due. Mike Stubblefield and Irene Michi have both said they are more than willing to continue participating. Irene said this will probably be her last term and that we could probably start looking for another individual once her term is up. However, if you guys are cool with it, Mike Stubblefield and Irene are more than willing to participate. So those will be on the agenda for December. And then just let me know your thoughts on Board of Adjustments. Yes.
When is the KCPC representative position up?
That is 2024, if I am remembering that correctly. You sent that to me, Sherry. It is.
Because it's important that that person shows up as well, and that's historically been an issue. So I know it's important for these other people to show up, but that one is probably the most critical of all positions, and that person unfortunately has an attendance issue.
And I'll talk to you about that, because he was under the assumption that if we were not on which has been rectified, and he has been there.
There have been times after that conversation that he has not.
Okay.
Because so many people are on that email, I get phone calls about it every single time Erlanger is not there. So people watch, they notice, and plus we have important business that's before KCPC, so it's important more than ever that we have representation, I'm just saying. I'm fine with this person being on there, providing there's attendance. That's all, thank you.
Okay. All right. That concludes our meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. Kyle? Miss Nicely? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Have a good evening.